My name is George. For years, I've lived in the same modest two-story home on Maple Street. I always thought of myself as someone with infinite patience, the kind of guy who could get along with just about anyone. That was before Marshall moved in next door, before I learned that some people are simply impossible to reason with, before I discovered how thin the line between sanity and madness really is, for him, and eventually, for me too. Marshall hadn't seemed particularly off when he first arrived. He was quiet, kept to himself mostly. We exchanged the customary neighborly nods for the first few weeks. I even brought over a bottle of wine to welcome him to the neighborhood. He'd accepted it with what I now recognize as a calculating smile, thanked me stiffly, and closed the door before I could suggest a proper chat. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs from day one. The trouble started small, as these things often do. First, it was the lawnmower at 6 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Not just once, every single Sunday, like clockwork. Marshall, hey, I don't mean to be that guy, but some of us are trying to sleep in on Sundays. Any chance you could mow a bit later in the day? This is my property, George. I'll maintain it when I see fit. His tone wasn't just dismissive, there was something beneath it, something almost gleeful at the thought of my discomfort. I tried to be reasonable, to brush it off as perhaps a misunderstanding. Maybe he was just one of those early risers who couldn't comprehend how anyone could waste precious daylight hours in bed. But then came the issue with the property line. I'd always maintained a small garden along the fence between our yards. Nothing fancy, just some tomatoes and peppers I enjoyed growing each summer. One day, I came home to find half of my plants torn out, a fresh layer of gravel extending 2 feet into what had always been my side. Marshall, what happened to my garden? The property line has been established for years. Those plants were definitely on my side. I checked the county records. The line is exactly where I've marked it now. Your previous neighbor was too generous. I'm simply reclaiming what's rightfully mine. That's not what my deed says. I've been here for 8 years. The line hasn't changed. Then perhaps you should consult a lawyer instead of bothering me with your confusion. I did consult a lawyer, and sure enough, the property line was exactly where I'd always understood it to be. When I showed Marshall the official documentation, he simply shrugged and walked away. The gravel remained. My plants didn't come back. I tried to be the bigger person. I really did. But Marshall seemed to take my attempts at civility as weakness, and his behavior only escalated. He installed security cameras, not just facing his property, but angled directly at my living room windows and backyard. When I asked him about it, he claimed it was for general security purposes. The constant feeling of being watched began to wear on me. Then came the noise complaints, not from me, from him. He called the police 3 times in 1 month, claiming I was hosting loud gatherings when I'd simply had my brother and his kids over for dinner. Each time the officers would arrive, see there was no disturbance, and leave with apologetic looks. Sorry to bother you again, Mr. Riley. We have to respond to every call, but we're starting to see a pattern here. It's not your fault. It's my neighbor. Well, I don't know what his problem is. I should have left it at that. Should have continued to take the high road. But something in me snapped when Marshall accidentally backed into my car while it was parked in my driveway. He claimed the sun was in his eyes, that he didn't see it. But I'd caught the smirk as he handed me his insurance information. So, I retaliated. Nothing serious, just a petty act of defiance. I positioned my sprinklers to spray just over the fence line onto his precious gravel border when they ran at night. Childish? Perhaps? Satisfying? Absolutely. Until he countered by pouring what I later discovered was motor oil along the flower beds on my side of the fence, killing everything I'd replanted. That's when the real war began. I installed my own security cameras. He reported me to the Homeowners Association for an unapproved installation. I filed a police report about the motor oil. He somehow got my personal email and signed me up for hundreds of spam newsletters. I played music, not loud, just persistent, pointed at our shared wall using a contact speaker. Each move and countermove became more elaborate. When his dog kept accidentally getting into my yard and leaving presents, I collected them all, and, under cover of darkness, arranged them in a perfect circle on his front doormat. When he started having packages delivered to my address and then accusing me of theft when they arrived. By 6 months in, Most of our neighbors had taken sides or were avoiding both of us entirely. The neighborhood cookouts stopped, including either of us. Children were guided to the opposite side of the street when walking past our houses. We had become the cautionary tale of Maple Street. The situation reached a breaking point during one particularly hot July. Marshall had taken to revving his motorcycle in his driveway at odd hours, midnight, 3 a.m., 5 a.m., never actually going anywhere, just letting the engine roar for exactly 7 minutes before shutting it off. Sleep deprivation began to take its toll on my mental state. Marshall, this has to stop. You're keeping the whole neighborhood awake. I need to warm up my bike before rides. Not my fault you're such a light sleeper. You're not going anywhere. You just sit there and rev it up, then go back inside. Prove it. His eyes had a wild gleam that unsettled me, the look of someone who not only enjoyed the conflict, but craved it. I realized then that this was all a game to him, a sick form of entertainment where my suffering was the main attraction. After 3 consecutive nights of the motorcycle symphony, I found myself standing in my garage at 2 a.m., staring at my collection of tools and chemicals, my mind racing with increasingly dark thoughts. The sleep deprivation, the constant stress, the feeling of powerlessness. It had changed me. I no longer recognized the person I was becoming. That night, I crossed a line I never thought I'd approach. I gathered up just enough sugar to fill a small container, crept over to his driveway while he was inside, and poured it into his gas tank. I told myself it was justified, that he'd pushed me too far, that it was the only language he understood. I had no idea if it would actually harm the vehicle, like I had always heard that it could. But I was desperate. The next morning brought a strange silence. No motorcycle, no Marshall darting hateful glances from behind his curtains. By afternoon, curiosity got the better of me, and I casually strolled past his driveway. The motorcycle was gone, and so was his car. Perhaps he'd finally taken a trip, giving us all a much-needed reprieve. 3 days passed without incident, the longest stretch of peace since he'd moved in. On the 4th day, I returned home from work to find the police at my door. Marshall had been hospitalized after his motorcycle had catastrophically failed on the highway. He'd suffered multiple fractures, paralysis, and a concussion when the engine seized at high speed. The officers weren't there to arrest me. They had no reason to suspect anything beyond mechanical failure. They were simply canvassing the neighborhood, seeing if anyone had been in touch with family they could contact. As they spoke, I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me. This wasn't property damage or inconvenience. This was serious injury I had caused. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Marshall lying broken on the asphalt played on repeat in my mind. I'd wanted him to stop, to leave me alone, to learn a lesson. But I'd never wanted this. Had I? The question haunted me as I paced through my suddenly too quiet house. A week later, Marshall returned home. I watched from behind my curtains as he struggled up his driveway in a wheelchair, his face still bruised and swollen. Something compelled me to go over. Perhaps guilt, perhaps some desperate hope for reconciliation after this sobering turn of events. Marshall, I heard what happened. I wanted to see if there's anything you need, any way I can help. You've helped quite enough, don't you think, George? His eyes met mine, and I knew immediately. He knew. Whether he had evidence or just intuition, he knew what I'd done. But instead of the rage I expected, his lips curved into a small, unsettling smile. It's interesting where lines get drawn, isn't it? What seemingly rational people are capable of when pushed. You've surprised me, George. I didn't think you had it in you. I don't know what you're going on about. I didn't do... I'll never walk again because of you. You won. To be honest, I thought I would get you to move away, but instead you go and cripple me. I can respect that. It's not as bad as what I had planned for you, but it's effective. He wheeled himself inside without another word, leaving me frozen on his doorstep. I returned to my home in a daze, locking the door behind me with trembling hands. For the first time, I was truly afraid. Not of what Marshall might do in retaliation, but of what I had already done. Of what I had become. The feud ended that day, though not from any mutual understanding or respect. It ended because I couldn't bear to look at the consequences of my actions each time Marshall struggled past my window. It ended because the victory I'd thought I wanted tasted like ash in my mouth. Marshall still lives next door. We don't speak. His motorcycle was never replaced. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I wonder if he lies awake too, planning his revenge, or if he's already exacted it by making me live with what I did. Because the truth is, I didn't defeat my insane neighbor. I became one. In trying to protect my peace, I'd sacrifice something more valuable, the person I thought I was. Some days, I tell myself it was justified, that anyone would have broken under the same circumstances. But in my clearer moments, I know better. There was a line, and I crossed it. Now I live on the other side, keeping company with my guilt and the lingering question that follows me everywhere. Exactly how different am I from the monster next door?